from NHCSR here. It is winter time and I am planning my field season. With that, I am learning as much as I can about the crops I want to work with to find out where I should be directing my attention. I'm reading up about pepper and I'm talking to people who know a thing or two about pepper. I reached out to the vegetable team at UMass who are doing really remarkable work supporting their growers growing vegetables. Their entomologist has been digging into a kind of obscure vegetable pest called pepper maggot. This insect has an outsized impact on the people who are seeing this impacting their peppers. So by that, I mean it's kind of obscure. Not a lot of people are having a problem, but the people who do have a problem with it have a very big problem with it, and they have very few solutions. So I'm going to share a little bit of my conversation with Alireza Shokoohi, because obviously I find anything to do with a fly very interesting. Also, Ali has a ton of other amazing experiences in IPM, having literally come out of the biocontrol trenches, irrigation ditches, but you'll hear more about that later. I also need your input because I want to know, is this a project worth contributing to? We get into why we up in New Hampshire could contribute to his work in Massachusetts. Is this important? Do you think this is interesting? Do you have pepper maggot? Would you be willing to host some research activities? Please reach out, and thanks for listening into my conversation.
My name is Alireza Shokoohi. I'm the extension educator and entomologist for the UMass Extension vegetable program. Pepper maggot is a fruit fly. It's a tephritid fruit fly. The adults emerge in the summer as the soil temperatures kind of get warm. They overwinter underground, just under the soil or in the crop debris. They fly up into the tree line. They mate. They come back down, find some pepper, fruits, or other similar plants, and lay their eggs into the fruits. That makes them really difficult to control. They're only in the field for sort of a limited amount of time when they're looking around, looking for a fruit to oviposit in, to lay eggs into. You really have to get the timing right, which is kind of the big challenge. For conventional growers, there are some products that at least have some like longer residuals, and if you spot those oviposition marks, you can look at the fruit and there's like a little pinprick mark that's pretty tough to see, or like you wouldn't really notice it as something to be concerned about unless you know what's going on.
Yeah, or you wouldn't notice it until it's obviously too late to do anything about it.
Exactly. But once you see that they're in the field, you can spray, and you can cover at least the peak of their oviposition activity time, and then hopefully that keeps most of your fruit safe. Another thing is just that it takes some time for the eggs to hatch, and then the larvae, the maggots, will tunnel around inside of the fruit. Sometimes people pick the fruits and they sell them while there's little fly eggs inside of them, but they're so imperceptible that usually the consumers or whoever's buying from them doesn't notice. If they're picking them and selling them green, oftentimes it's like bell peppers that are on the plant for longer, where the larvae do grow, do develop, and they become larger instars, which are definitely noticeable. Sometimes they like tunnel closer to the skin, and you can see on the outside the sort of hollowing out of the pepper. And then eventually, once they've fed enough, they bore a hole out of the bottom of the pepper, which you can see towards like the end of August or in September. And then they drop down, pupate in the soil, continue the cycle. Organic growers, I think, are the ones in our region that struggle with it the most because their options for chemical management are not great. There's GF120 Natural Light is sort of the go-to or the best thing that you can use, and that's like a spinosad, but it's spinosad bait. You have to like spray it in the field with, you can't just use any old equipment. You need to have larger droplets so that they don't immediately evaporate. It's not a contact insecticide, right? It needs to be ingested by the fly. And if you spray it in the field, it has sort of an attractant inside of that liquid that causes the fly to go in. While it's looking for fruits, it'll lap up some of that liquid, and that will control the adults.
You know the old joke, like good news for entomologists is almost always bad news for growers.
Yeah.
Like I am always excited about taphridids because they're such a charismatic fly to me. There's so many cool things we can do with behavior. Like the product that you just mentioned, GF120, that's a tried and true method. Like they use that for medfly out in California. I mean, it's a serious thing. It's not just for funsy, but it is very narrow. And unless you're worried about apple maggot, like there's not a lot of other
Exactly.
taphridids that are in your suite of pests to worry about.
Yeah, so it
So,
really is just the like large organic pepper growers,
mhm,
which there just aren't that many of them, and so they're the only ones that can use this. But then
yeah,
smaller farmers really struggle because it's not worth buying a bunch of this insecticide for this one
yeah,
pest on this one crop. But there's just not much else you can do besides covering. So if you're a small enough producer, you can cover the peppers at the time when they are active and laying eggs. That can be a good control method, but for that too, you need to know when they're active. So,
yeah. So let's talk about the work you've done so far
Mhm.
on predictive modeling or monitoring. What are you working on right now?
I wish we could have a predictive model. That would actually be, I was thinking about that, if we could develop like a degree day model or something
Yeah,
to better predict them. But for now, monitoring really comes down to scouting the fruit around the time when they usually come out. But even just in my limited experience, there's quite a bit of disparity from year to year. I think last year it showed up like 3 or 4 weeks almost
yeah.
before it did the year prior. It kind of like blindsided me. It depends a lot on the conditions of that year. And so it's hard, right? And you need to go and scout and look for those oviposition marks, which are hard to see.
Yeah.
And so until you have like a good amount of your peppers already infested, oftentimes you don't know that this
Right.
fly is out and active.
And it could be mistaken for some other things too. Like, are there some other things that you are like lookalikes for that little sting? Because if it's just a little hole, what have you come across?
Sometimes there's just like the way the fruits develop. It depends on the type of pepper, right? But sometimes in like the bull's horn varieties, that's what I've
Yeah.
seen them on a lot, right? Even like when you have a lot of different varieties next to each other, they seem to really go after the bull's horn and the bell peppers. And sometimes just the way it develops, it kind of creates a little crease or some kind of little fold in the skin that kind of looks like this oviposition mark.
Right. Well, also, it sounds like this is a really understudied organism. Like, if you have a problem with it, you have a really serious problem, but it's kind of rare. Like, do we know anything about its preference? Like, do you think it's better or worse than sweet pepper versus hot pepper? Like, do we know anything about that?
There's some information about that. There's so I've seen cherry peppers mentioned as like one that they're really highly attracted to. I think because they ripen pretty early,
Well, that
but
makes
also
sense.
it's often referenced as a good sort of monitoring tool to plant like a row of them on the edge near the forested border
Yeah.
and look for those oviposition marks because they're like smooth and kind of reddish and it
Like
makes
an
it easy.
indicator.
Exactly.
Cool.
So it makes it easier to look for those oviposition marks, but not a lot of the growers that I've worked with actually just people don't want to grow them. Maybe partly because they're preferred by the pepper maggot, but
Yeah,
also
maybe.
what they're looking to
So,
grow.
what about a trap?
Yeah, so that's what I've been working on. 2 years ago, we tried to use sticky trap, just like regular sticky trap cards. One thing that's often talked about is like there was this one study, I think out of Yukon some time ago, where they put up sticky traps that were baited up in the tree line to capture
To
these
capture
flies.
that early season mating period?
Exactly. And that apparently worked pretty well. They were able to capture the flies, but at what cost, right? That's not something every grower is going to go out and do. We tried putting them out just in the pepper fields just to see if we get like any of them, but nothing. Just didn't capture any of the flies, and we started seeing the oviposition marks, and we're like, okay, so they are in here, but we're not catching them. Last year, I tried out a few different things, and one of the trapping techniques actually worked pretty well. Again, it was like a little bit later in the season, so I missed the very start of the year, but planning to do it again this year. But basically, what it is it's just like a pheromone trap, similar to what you would do for sweet corn pests, right? So there's no like insecticide involved. It's purely based on the fact that they will fly up into the trap if there's a kind of lure in there, and then have trouble getting out. They want to fly up to get out, but there's no hole at the top, so they end up trapped inside of this little plastic trap. It worked surprisingly well. I didn't expect to catch as many flies as I caught. And I'm thinking that, at the very least, this would be a good monitoring tool to hopefully capture, like, when are they out? And, for the smaller growers, that would be the time to cover. For, larger growers, conventional growers, that's the time to spray. And I'm looking to do a little bit more research on these traps, see how well they hold up, and see if it works in more than just like the one or two fields that I was able to capture or that I did test this out in last year.
Well, this is where I want to see how could I help, right? So it sounds like you have a really promising tool. The more places that can be tested, the better, because you have different populations, you'll have different like landscapes across the board. So like different tree canopies will interfere with how that insect population is interacting with your traps. Also, because this is a charismatic little fly it's pretty easy to identify. I mean, I say that because I work with flies, but it's not spotted winged Drosophila, right? Like it's not this, you have to look at its parts to identify it kind of
They have
thing.
striped wings, the
Yeah.
yellow markings, kind of funky colored eyes. They are pretty distinct, and so one look inside of this trap, and you can see, oh, there they all are.
Yeah. So as I'm kind of pounding the pavement and finding places that might be good places for you to send us traps to test out this year, talk a little bit about like what I should be looking for. I mean, I would say that like if they had them last year, chances are good they had them this year, right? What else
Yeah.
might I be looking
So
for?
so one thing is proximity to tree line, right? Because they do like to go up into the trees and then mate there and then come back down. Farms that are like close to forested borders or edges tend to see more of
Yeah.
the pepper maggot. But also, like you mentioned, just like field history is a huge deal.
Yeah.
We see pepper maggot in like one field over and over every year, but then, a few miles down, you might have another big field of peppers and no pepper maggot at all, right? Because they tend to just seemingly not travel too far once
Yeah.
they're like looking for that tree line or once they're looking for the peppers. And they kind of stick around in one area. That's one thing that makes this study kind of difficult, right? Like trying to figure out, where do I put these traps? Where can we expect that we're going to find these?
Right.
And that needs to be places where, people are growing peppers and this pepper maggot is constantly a problem. And so,
Do we know about any alternate hosts? Like, are there wild hosts that they're reproducing in?
there are, to my knowledge, again, this isn't the most thoroughly researched insect. There are some wild solanaceous weeds that, if they are fruiting around the same time as the peppers, that the pepper maggot does affect those. But yeah, I'm not sure to what extent.
The literature is spotty.
Exactly.
What else might you recommend to me if I am approaching this? Like, what are some low-hanging fruit in pepper? Like, what else? What are the other players in pepper IPM that I need to know about?
Around here, it's mostly in high tunnel and greenhouse. I don't know if you're interested in that, but in high tunnel greenhouse, there's all the aphids, thrips, and
Yeah.
mites issues that are pretty common, and people do struggle with those. Um, Flea beetles a little bit.
Yeah.
Also, often in the high tunnels, people get those.
Like when you see aphids in high tunnels, do you see that like sticky, mildewy honeydew
Occasionally,
problem?
people try to manage it. People try to keep it under control. I think
Yeah.
bigger issue actually that's more difficult to control tends to be broad mites on peppers.
Ooh.
That's one that is just difficult to spot until they're causing like scarring and issues with the fruits, and so that's like direct marketable yield damage, right?
Broadnight is kind of my white whale a little bit. Like I know that I want like I know there's a need with the tercinevid mites because they are a little bit
Mhm.
different from the other mites that we see in greenhouses, but there's not a lot of expertise about this.
Yes, I've noticed that when trying to help out the growers that get the broad mites, and
Right.
it is some of them have had some success with predatory mites using
Mm-hmm.
biocontrol to control the broad mites preventatively, and
Yep.
it is always tough to say, what's helping, what's not helping, but I know at least one or two growers that had issues with broad mites. I recommended some biocontrols. They put them out and haven't had issues since,
Yeah.
and hopefully that um, stays that way. But I think that's an
Well, at
interesting area of research.
At one point, I did reach out to Ron Ochoa, who is the mite expert, and I had originally reached out to him about spinach crown mite, which is something that happens in wintertime spinach, right? So only during cool seasons. And the more we talked about it, the more I was not convinced that the damage that we call winter crown mite is caused by a mite. That might be a story for another day. However, he did confirm with me that your advice for biocontrol with broadmite on pepper was a good one. That like the biocontrol agents that we put out for the other spider mites have really good efficacy on the tarsinamide mites. What I could not figure out is the other big question that a lot of growers ask is, do they overwinter, right? So like once you bring in that broadmite, because it's usually coming in on transplants, is it there? Like is your soil dunzo bunzo? No idea.
Good question. I don't know either. Yeah.
So another question for the research world to take a look at. But
Yeah.
I mean, in your experience, the folks that had broad mite issues, did they have chronic problems with them, or did they kind of go away? Or
From what I've seen, it's been kind of like a surprise to people when it shows up, and then when they incorporate the biocontrols, if they weren't using them already, then it becomes a little bit less of an issue. So it's hard to say if it
yeah,
does, if you don't manage it, what's gonna happen or what tends to be the case. I'll let you know if I hear more.
I think that you're getting the real New England entomologist experience, right? Which is every time something crosses your plate, it's like understudied. Nobody knows anything. It's obscure. It's very serious. Like they're having a horrible problem. They
Mhm.
need a solution, but it doesn't bother. It doesn't hurt people very often, but when it does, it really is a big problem.
Yeah, yeah. It's like every pest
Every
around
pest,
here
it's
is
like, oh
is
man,
exactly
like
that.
it's not like
Yeah.
conventional farming.
Yeah. Just thinking about what you were asking for about other pests in peppers in the
Pepper.
field, especially. I will say I haven't seen this in person, but some growers have mentioned the second flight of European corn borer occasionally being an issue on the
Yep.
fruits. And I've been interested, and other people have asked me about using the trichogramma wasps for controlling that second wave of European corn borer in
Yeah.
their pepper fields. So that's something that I've been curious about.
They
Yeah,
definitely did it down in Virginia. I think it's totally worth thinking about, especially in high tunnels.
yeah,
Like
right.
are the people who are growing pepper in high tunnels, are they following a typical season or are they trying to push their production outside of the normal time that you would see pepper?
I think it depends on the grower. People
Yeah.
do all kinds of different things in high tunnels. It depends on if there's another crop they want to get in for the winter. It
Yeah.
depends on if they want to leave the tunnel bare for some time and get rid of whatever pests they've had during the warmer months. And so there's just so much variation, right?
That is also my experience working with tunnel growers is
Yeah.
every single tunnel is different and like the way that they use that tool to fit into their unique market, everybody's different. There's not a lot of patterns. So that's exciting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really like fascinating to visit and hear about how all kinds of people are doing things differently. makes it tough to do research, but yeah.
Well, I'm going to put a pin in it there because we do get into the weeds a little bit about experimental design and insect behavior, as two entomologists are wont to do. But please comment below. Are you seeing anything that causes you concern in pepper? What kind of peppers are you growing? What kind of problems are you seeing? Could this weird thing that you might be seeing in your pepper fruits, could it be pepper maggot and you didn't know? So please reach out, leave a comment, and thank you for listening.